Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the great honor. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks to the Tylers for their vision in creating the prize, and to the committee that awarded it to me, and to all of you who have come here today to share this with me, and especially to Amber Brown for all the work she's done in putting this together. That's you, Amber. Thank you. The central problem facing societies, in my view, is how do we achieve a sustainable future? Can we grow economically without compromising options for future generations? This is basically the way the Brundtland Report defined the problem. How do we leave for future generations the same sort of opportunities we have? And for those of us who remember Pogo, we may remember his famous quote, "We are faced with insurmountable opportunities." And that's really what my focus is going to be today. It's on obstacles and opportunities in environmental management. The bigger the obstacle, the bigger the opportunity. So I've laid out, and as I thought about this, 5 things that I think are obstacles to doing a better job. The first I call the swamp of uniqueness. The notion that every ecosystem is different from one another. Indeed, every ecosystem is unique, but that doesn't mean that we can't derive generalities. We can still develop a functional taxonomy that allows generalizations. This is one of the few technical slides I'll have today, but it's very simple. It says here, if we map based on the average temperature and the average precipitation of a region, we can't predict exactly what species are going to be there, but we can predict where we're going to find tropical rainforest, where we're going to find temperate grassland, etc. So there are some generalizations, some generalities that we can derive that help us to develop a theory of the structure of ecosystems. Every management challenge is unique. The lobster gangs of Maine have worked out a system for managing the lobster fisheries. The water temples of Bali, this is a wonderful story that my colleague Steve Lansing has developed. Don't have time to talk to you about it, but it's a system that's self-organized where, based on the priests who help to mediate the water distribution systems, it's a system that's developed over many centuries. The government realized how inefficient this was and brought in a bunch of programmers, and everything collapsed. So they went back to the natural system. The Tribunal de las Aguas of Valencia, it's the oldest democratic institution in Europe, a millennium old, resolves irrigation disputes. So all of these share common features of a problem I'll talk a great deal about today, namely the problems of the commons, the problems of public goods, and common pool resources. Fishermen sharing grounds not only with each other, but with oil rigs in the background. How do we share these grounds? Dealing with these problems requires a systems level approach, and I took this off the NOAA website. We need to be thinking about marine ecosystems as ecosystems, with species interdependent on each other, no longer managing one species at a time, which has been the history. So these sorts of examples argue for the need for a theoretical and a conceptual framework based on these systems as complex adaptive systems. I'll tell you more about that. And adaptive environmental management, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. But we need theoretical approaches, and that's where the mathematics comes in. I'm not going to take you through these equations. This is really artwork. But meeting that challenge can benefit from a mathematical framework. And indeed, this is not new. This is a great mathematician, Vito Volterra, known among mathematicians for his work on integral equations and things of that sort, but attracted to problems of the fluctuations in the Adriatic fisheries. Careful, there's of the Adriatic fisheries nearly a century ago. And Volterra, working with his son-in-law, helped to work out mathematical models describing these fluctuations, which still infuse the teaching of theoretical ecology today. So that's the first obstacle. The second is what I call the temple of the discipline. In a university, we know that academia creates silos in which people work within their own disciplines and don't talk to each other, don't know how to talk to each other. And we really need to, for the problems I'm going to talk about today, to encourage true multidisciplinarity, not just between biology and mathematics and physics and chemistry, but to the social sciences and the humanities and business as well. So we need to find ways to develop dialogues. The third obstacle is the fact that ecosystems are complex systems. I'll talk a great deal about that today. This comes about in various descriptions. Darwin talked about the tangled bank. We're concerned about the whole of the system, but how does we relate that to the parts? Is there a balance in nature? All of these have to do with the complexity of these systems. So just like in physics, where we're dealing with complex systems all the time. For example, when you go to boil water or to create pressure to transform a liquid into a gas, or to change a liquid into a solid like ice, that involves the movement of millions of molecules banging into each other. But you don't sit down and make those calculations every time you go to boil water. Physics has developed ways to relate the microscopic to the macroscopic, thermodynamics and statistical mechanics. And we really have a challenge to do the same sorts of things in dealing with environmental problems. And I'll talk a great deal about that. How do you go from individuals to the macroscopic properties of the collective? The fourth obstacle I want to talk about is the present as the enemy of the future. How do we discount the future? How do we manage to give importance to future generations? You may recognize this young man. He's in the audience today, along with his father. How much should we leave to future generations? So this is a great challenge, and I'll talk a little bit about this, but this is a problem that's been of terrific interest to me. And the last obstacle I want to talk about is us, people, the most dangerous species, and the challenges faced the commons. This says, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Overfish, and soon no one eats. So how do we control our appetites that are bigger than they need to be?